A bright blue sky lay over the busy metropolis, with skyscrapers towering high into the sky. Among the buildings, there is an old building that looks neglected and abandoned in the middle of the city. Ranga, a brave and adventurous young man, comes to explore the building with his friend Melissa. However, what started as a simple adventure turned into an epic journey that risked their courage and death. Ranga strides quickly along the paved road with a black leather jacket and a hat covering his messy hair. He arrived in front of an old building that looked like an abandoned factory. "Hi, Ranga. What's wrong?" Melissa asked. "It's nothing. I just wanted to have a look around," Ranga replied with a chuckle. "What do you want to see?" "You've never come here before," Melissa asked again. "I don't know. I just think there's something interesting here," Ranga replied. "All right, if you say so. But we have to be careful. Who knows, there might be danger," Melissa warned. "Don't worry, I won't risk too much," said Ranga as he entered the building. They began to explore each room. In a quiet room, Ranga felt something strange. He felt that a force was calling him. The two began to explore every room of the building. Although nothing caught Melissa's attention, Ranga felt something strange. He felt a strong force calling him and led him to a quiet room. "Do you feel anything?" Ranga asked Melissa. Melissa shook her head. "No, I don't feel anything." Ranga then moved away from Melissa and felt something strange in the room. Suddenly, a light appeared in the center of the room and called out to her. He felt the powerful force of the light and was caught in an unexpected journey. "What's going on? I feel like I'm being sucked into this light," Ranga shouted in fear. Melissa tried to save him, but she was unable to get him out of the light. "What should we do now?" asked Melissa anxiously. Ranga felt the overwhelming power of the light, and she felt new energy entering her body. He felt the power radiating throughout his body, making him feel stronger than ever. "Ranga, how are you feeling?" asked Melissa worriedly. "I'm fine, Melissa. I feel like my strength is growing, and something new is awakening inside me," replied Ranga excitedly. Melissa looked at Ranga with amazement and wonder. She felt that he had become stronger and more confident. "What has happened to you, Ranga?" Melissa asked. "Something new has awakened inside me, Melissa. I feel stronger and more confident," replied Ranga. "What should we do now?" asked Melissa, trying to distract them from Ranga. Ranga and Melissa looked at each other, and suddenly the place changed as if they were sent to a different dimension. It was indescribable, but this place was like a galaxy in the sky. They both couldn't believe the situation they were in. Ranga and Melissa were still staring at the beauty unfolding in front of them, unable to believe what was happening. However, appearing from above a huge entity whose body was like an invisible and intangible cosmic mass, they were confronted by a supernatural entity who told them that they were chosen to save the fantasy world that was in danger. "Ranga, Melissa, I am the entity that has chosen you to save the fantasy world that is in danger," said the entity in a calm voice. "What does that mean?" asked Ranga, still confused by the situation. "This fantasy world is facing a threat from a very powerful antagonist, called the Underlord. Your powers from the real world will be valuable in the fight against the Underlord," explained the entity.
Melissa remained silent, not knowing what to do. Ranga began to ask himself, why were we chosen? What makes us different from other people? Meanwhile, in Melissa's heart, she felt fear and doubt. What will happen if we fail? We're just ordinary humans. How can we fight the Underlord? However, the entity could read their minds. You were chosen because you have the traits needed to save this fantasy world. Ranga has courage and decisiveness, while Melissa has discernment and wisdom, the entity explained. Ranga and Melissa looked at each other, contemplating the entity's words. Finally, Ranga ventured to ask, "What will happen if we fail?" "If you fail, this fantasy world will perish and the Underlord will rule it. However, you will be given the necessary power and knowledge to face the Underlord," the entity replied firmly. After thinking for a moment, Ranga and Melissa agreed to the task given by the entity. They both realized that this would not be easy, but they also felt that this was an opportunity given by fate to do great things and save this fantasy world from the destruction that threatened it. "What exactly do we have to do?" asked Ranga. "You must face the Underlord and defeat him," the entity replied hoarsely. "He is a very powerful and dangerous figure to this world." "Underlord?" asked Melissa. "Who is he?" "The Underlord is the antagonist of this world," explained the entity. "He has long waited for the opportunity to take over this fantasy world and rule it with his dark power. He will destroy everything in his path and make this world a terrible place." Ranga and Melissa looked at each other, knowing that the task at hand was daunting. However, they also felt called to carry it out. "How can we fight the Underlord?" asked Ranga. "You will be given powers that exceed your abilities in the real world," the entity replied. "And as practice, you will attack the Underlord's army to test your abilities. But don't worry, you will be rescued and returned to the safety of the cave." Ranga and Melissa nodded, knowing that there was no other way but to carry out this task. This fantasy world was under threat and they were the only hope. Determined, they prepared to begin their journey to new powers and face the dangers that threaten this world. "We must gather our strength and prepare to face the Underlord, our greatest enemy," Ranga replied. Melissa looked at Ranga with an eager gaze. She knew that he was a leader, and she would always be ready to follow him wherever he went. "I'm ready to follow you, Ranga." "We will face the Underlord and defeat him," Melissa said excitedly. Ranga smiled and looked at Melissa with trust and courage. "We'll do it together, Melissa. We will defeat the Underlord and save this world from his threat," he said. Determined, Ranga and Melissa continued their journey to gather strength and prepare to face the Underlord, their greatest enemy. An epic journey filled with adventure and friendship begins. Melissa and Ranga wield a sophisticated weapon given to them by the entity. The weapons look futuristic with a sleek and smooth design made of shiny black metal. Each weapon has complex control buttons and a holographic screen that displays data and information about the weapon. Melissa holds a long weapon with a smooth, sharp blade. The weapon looked like a sword, but with some complicated technological modifications. On the handle of the weapon are control buttons and a holographic screen that displays data about the weapon. At the tip of the blade was a glowing part, looking like a glowing energy crystal. Ranga was holding a weapon that was shorter but heavier than Melissa's weapon. The weapon looked like a combination of a pistol and a sword. The handle had the same control buttons and holographic screen as Melissa's weapon. At the end of the weapon was a sharp blade, and on top was a plasma cannon that could fire deadly plasma projectiles. With these advanced weapons in hand, Melissa and Ranga were ready to face the powerful and terrifying Underlord army. After holding their new weapon, Melissa and Ranga felt its weight in their hands. The weapon was made of shiny black metal, equipped with various advanced features such as attack power control, self-protection, and others. Melissa was fascinated by the technology behind the weapon, while Ranga looked nervous but also excited to use it. The entity gave instructions on how to control the weapon, and they both started practicing. At first, they found it difficult to control the heavy and complex weapon, but after a while, they began to feel comfortable and mastered the basic movements. They were then teleported to the location where the Underlord army was located. Upon arriving there, they saw a very large and powerful Underlord army. They felt a little intimidated by the size of the army, but they held their weapons tightly and were ready to fight. Damn, this Underlord army is huge. We have to be careful, Melissa said, trying to remain calm. It's okay, Melissa. We can do it, said Ranga, encouraging them. They then began to attack the Underlord army with their advanced weapons. Ranga's weapon looked like a double sword with blades that looked like bat wings, while Melissa's weapon looked like a watch set that could shoot energy projectiles. At first, they struggled because the Underlord's army was so numerous and strong, but they started to take over after a few minutes. They both helped each other out and carried out well-coordinated attacks. Their weapons proved to be very effective against the powerful Underlord army. However, at that moment, one of the Underlord forces appeared behind them and attacked them with a larger and more powerful weapon. The weapon looked like a large sword made of the same black metal as their weapons. The two of them were almost killed if not saved by Entity, who suddenly appeared and moved them to safety. You two are pretty good, but you should be more careful. The Underlord's army is stronger than you think, the Entity said. They were then teleported to the cave where they first started their adventure. The Entity said that they needed to be stronger if they wanted to defeat the Underlord's army. You still have plenty of time to train, Melissa and Ranga. You need to be even stronger if you want to defeat the Underlord's army, the Entity said. After speaking with the Entity, Melissa and Ranga were teleported to the cave where they started their adventure. The Entity gave them instructions not to show off their advanced weapons to anyone, as they didn't want to attract unnecessary attention. You can store your weapons virtually. You do this by opening a portal like a door, which you can move anywhere using only mind power and hand gestures. The portal is only the size of your palm, and you can open and close it easily, the Entity explained to them. Epilogue. Melissa and Ranga smiled at each other and nodded in understanding. They were ready to start their adventure and defeat the Underlord's army. Eagerly, they stepped out of the cave and into a world filled with challenges and dangers. They knew that they had advanced weapons that could help them in battle, but they also knew that they had to be wise in using them. They were determined to keep practicing and improving their fighting skills and to keep their advanced weapons a secret from anyone. With a steady pace, they stepped forward and were ready to face any obstacles that lay ahead of them. Their adventure has begun, and they will fight to ensure that truth and justice will always prevail.